Okay, well,
even.
our SEC championship is also set. Alabama versus Florida. Florida's currently a number 6 team, only a 1-loss team. They lost to Texas A&M, who lost to Alabama. If Bama loses this game, do they still get in? Because they're not keeping Florida out if they win the SEC championship.
I don't.
Because at that point, now we're having 2 teams that just lost their title game, their conference championship game,
Still in.
while you're removing Ohio State, Cincinnati, teams like that. So Clemson, Notre Dame, in this scenario, we're saying Clemson wins the ACC championship game. Clemson and Notre Dame are both in. Now, Florida beats Alabama in the SEC championship game. Are they both in, or is Bama out?
I'm gonna let you. I mean,
you want to say that again?
You want to say that again? Up. You want to, or actually, yeah. Matt's
Repeat
it again.
Okay, so
It's hard to follow a little bit.
yeah, Clemson versus Notre Dame.
Yep.
Notre Dame already has one head-to-head victory over Clemson.
Yes.
But this is the SEC championship game. Both teams are fully healthy. They've been given an extra week to prepare. Now, Clemson beats Notre Dame. Both teams are 1-loss teams with only wins against each other.
Mm-hmm.
We've already agreed they are both in this scenario.
Yes.
Alabama versus Florida, the SEC championship game. Florida currently sits at 1 loss. Their 1 loss being the Texas A&M,
and they're what,
who
6
lost
right
to
now?
Bama. Yeah,
2
Florida's
losses.
at 6, A&M is at 5. And a lot of people are switching those back and forth, but Florida has clinched the SEC East, so the championship is Alabama versus Florida. Now, Bama is undefeated.
Yes.
Florida the 1 loss. If Bama wins, they're number 1 seed, done. It's easy. 1 and done, it's over. But if Bama loses this game, do they still get in, and where do we fit Florida and Ohio State and Clemson if we're still leaving Bama in?
Well, we got to even see if Ohio State plays this weekend.
Because
I mean, they probably will, but we don't.
we don't know.
We
And
don't know
if
yet.
if they win, I don't know if the college football playoff will even put them in. I don't know.
It's almost set at this point. As long as Ohio State wins the Big Ten championship, they're in.
okay.
And they probably will.
The committee has already kind of made it clear that Ohio State's
Okay.
going to be
They
in.
want Ohio State in.
If Ohio State is undefeated, they are in. So Ohio State plays Northwestern Big Ten championship game. We'll say they win. Or either way, really. So then we're talking about a 1-loss Northwestern, a 1-loss Big Ten, Ohio State.
It's a very confusing process, like you were saying. With if Alabama wins,
this could be the
they,
most complicated thing ever.
It's just a little hard to
I do
follow.
believe Florida has a chance to beat them too. I mean, Alabama's number 1. If number 1 goes down and that team's close, like you gotta put them in.
But do you penalize them out of falling out of the top 4 for losing to a 6-seeded team?
Now, if Notre Dame,
You kind of have.
you have to.
I mean, they've been number 1 all year.
Yeah, they've been number 1 all year. Well, besides Clemson was number 1, then they lost.
It's the beginning.
Yeah.
Right. But let me put it this way. We're saying, because at this point, with Notre Dame and Bama getting in with losses, we're now excluding 3 teams, two teams that won their conference championships, for 2 teams that lost their conference championships. The committee really has shown that championship does matter when we're talking about teams that are have equal stature and have won. If somebody has the championship and somebody doesn't, they give it to the team that has it. That's how Ohio State got in 2014 in the playoffs, because Baylor and TCU were split Big 12 champions.
Right.
Neither one of them had it because they didn't used to have a Big 12 championship game. They put one in the next year.
The next year, yeah.
Because they realized, oh, well, this is going to hurt us in the future. Because it would have multiple times at this point. So they've said that championship matters. An outright championship matters. And you're not going to leave out an undefeated Ohio State over any 1-loss team. They've kind of said, if you're undefeated, you're our top guys. I mean, every year it's like 1, 2, 3. Those are undefeated, and then the ones fall behind it, and then the 2s fall behind it.
And like I mentioned last week, if that's what it takes to get into the playoff, like guarantee your spot in the playoff, that is so hard to do.
So
go undefeated. You have to go perfect.
Yeah.
And that makes this the perfect championship.
Right.
You have to be the very best. This proves outright you are indefinitely the best team in the country. You didn't lose. You did what is virtually impossible, and up until recently, perfect seasons all the way through the championship are still really uncommon. I think they've happened the past 2 years now.
Yeah, LSU and then Clemson the one.
Right.
Yeah.
Those are the only 2 times, I think, going back even further, like, undefeated champions don't happen that often.
It's hard.
But it's literally be perfect and your championship won't get any slander on it.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of how it works. That's the scenario. So in the scenario, does Alabama still get in if they lose the SEC championship?
It just has to it depends on, like, I mean, Clemson might lose. Like, you have to talk about that.
Well, yeah,
like,
I'm setting the scenario. Ohio State wins, Clemson wins, Cincinnati wins, and Florida wins.
Florida would beat Alabama.
Florida would beat Bama. So in my mind, Bama's out.
Yeah.
They might be the best team in the country right now, but they're out.
But at that time, they have to win that, and they're not.
Unless with a Notre Dame loss, I take Notre Dame out.
Okay.
If Clemson beats Notre Dame,
so you wouldn't leave both of them in. You would take Notre Dame out.
one of the conference champions that loses, one of the teams that loses the conference championship game, they're out.
Yeah.
I can't put you in if I
that's
already have the team.
That's how it should be to me, but that's not how it's been in years past.
I agree with you
that's
because
with the SEC championship game. Yeah, normally.
I agree with you because a championship or a division championship is way higher than a regular or a conference championship is way higher than a regular season game.
Exactly.
You can beat Clemson and then Notre Dame. Good job, hats off to you. But you got to beat them, you have to beat them in that championship game.
If Notre Dame can't come out and beat Clemson when they have Trevor Lawrence, I'm sorry, they're out. In my mind, they're out. I've said it a lot of times this year. I thought they've been overrated. They haven't performed well in a lot of games. Their best game was that Clemson game, and I admit they played phenomenal in that game. It was by far their best game they've ever played. But if they do that in the ACC championship, then this entire conversation doesn't matter because then we can't have Alabama and Florida in. Everything hangs on this ACC championship game. Mm-hmm. If Clemson goes out and beats Notre Dame, I think Notre Dame's out. I think the loser of the ACC championship is out.
I agree, but I don't know if that'll happen. But like you're saying, it
also depends now. If we're looking at this now, separating the Ohio State, if we're looking at the Ohio Big Ten championship game, if Ohio State loses to Northwestern, does Northwestern fly up into that?
I don't know if I put them in because they have that loss to Michigan State.
Yeah. Still we're talking about a one-loss Big Ten champion.
I think it's just a high hurdle for them to just fly up into the top four. I mean, they're out of the top 10 right now.
Okay.
I don't know if you could put them in.
Now, how does A&M get in? Texas A&M, they currently sit at 5th. They're one loss to Bama. I have it saying Bama has to win against Florida, which would eliminate Florida from any competition, and Ohio State has to lose that because then 5 just falls right into 4.
They just slip in.
Yeah.
Right. But I also have how does Cincinnati fit into the college football playoffs? Because it is possible. But this would take something insane. Bama has to beat Florida. Notre Dame has to beat Clemson. Ohio State has to be out. And our final 4 teams would be Bama, Notre Dame, A&M, and Cincinnati.
Oof.
Yeah, it's not likely for them to get in.
Weird.
It's not even likely that the committee would put that team together.
Even with all that happening, they still might not put them in.
Right. I mean, Clemson most likely would be out, but it's entirely possible that we would still have Ohio State in, even with the Big Ten championship loss over Cincinnati.